All right. Hey guys, Italy Horse 45 here, doing the next video in the database program. We're going to be doing the implementation of the database class. We did this last video. If you didn't see that, go check it out. You're going to need to know what all these do, I guess. And here we're going to be going over how to implement all those. So first we're going to have to include a good amount of functions, or a good amount of libraries rather. Include, first of all, IOStream, one of the standard ones, and all of C++. Include, we're going to need algorithm. Let me try to spell that right. I always tend to spell that wrong. ALGORITHM. ALGORITHM. Yep. Pound include, we're going to need fstream for our file streaming, and include string for string functions. I'm actually not quite sure if we're going to need those, but I'm going to put it in there anyway for now so I don't have to think about it later. Pound include database .h to pair it with the interface file using namespace standard. We can do that in here. All right, so let's just jump right into the default constructor database. There we go, database. All right, so we're just initializing all the variables here. Used is going to equal 0. Capacity is going to equal 5. First, going to by default make it a 5. Person list to begin with, and data is going to equal a new employee with a new array of employees with the size of capacity. There we go. So that's all we need to do for that. Now we need to database the copy constructor here. Const. It's basically just copying this over. No, it's not employee, it's database. What am I thinking here? Database at other. So what this is going to do is just basically just copy all the information over. Used equals other dot used. There we go. Capacity equals other dot capacity, and data is going to equal a new array, new employee capacity. All right, so this is basically just going to create a whole new array. Then this is where algorithm comes in handy. It's just algorithm has a function called copy with and the parameters are going to be other dot data comma other dot data plus used, and the last one's going to be data. So essentially what it is the destination's beginning, the destination's ending, and the this is the original's beginning, the original's ending, and the destination. So it's just going to say copy from the very beginning to the end into the new. So that's what that function. That's what that's going to do. It's just going to copy all the information from the old one into the new one. Now next is the deconstructor. Database. See if it's on here. It's on the very bottom. Destructor. There we go. And this is the simple one line delete for some reason here, I'm not 100% sure why, but it takes the braces in front of the array. And you could put a snappy line in there if you wanted some text output, so you know when it's deleting the array. But I'm not going to do that. Void data. Now onto the next database. I just spelled that wrong. We're going to be doing the overloaded operator. Let's see, is that right there? This operator, const database at other. So basically, this is going to handle whenever a person puts like emp1 for an employee equals emp2. It's just going to handle that certain statement, which we may not even use in this, but it's good to know how to do anyway. The first step when doing an equality operator overload is to check for self-assignment if at other equals this. So basically, it checks to see if the address of the new class or new object is the same as the one being passed into it. So basically, it checks to see if emp, like say the first employee is the same as the second. Then it's just not going to even bother to copy. It's just going to return out of the function. So basically, if it's trying to copy the same employee into itself, it's just going to just return, just forget about it. First step in this is to delete the old array, delete data, and then capacity equals other dot capacity, and it's basically the same as what was in the other dot used. Yeah, it's gonna look very similar to the old one. Data equals new employee capacity, and I'm just gonna go ahead and just copy this. Copy the copy, because it's the same. All right, so that's it for the overloaded equality operator. That's a good thing to know how to do. It's very widely used when doing dynamic memory. The copy constructor, the destructor, and the equality overloaded they're known as the big three of dynamic memory. They're used whenever dynamic memory is being used. So it's just good to know how to do those. So the next thing we're going to do is the make bigger function. Void database. Let's see, where are we at here? It's not on here. Hold on. Let me just check back here. Make sure I put it in there. Oh yeah, it's in the private, so it doesn't show it there. Make underscore bigger. Starting to panic there for a second. I was like, did I not put it in the last video? But I was pretty sure that I did. All right, so in here, it's going to essentially, let me just get started here and I'll explain afterwards. A new pointer to a employee, temp equals new employee capacity plus 5. Basically, it's just going to create another a temporary array with a bigger capacity. Then we're going to copy the old into the new data data plus used, comma temp. Just put all the old information into the new temporary one, delete the old one, delete data. I don't put that inside. Delete data. Data equals temp, which is actually going to use the overloaded equality operator there, so that will work perfectly fine. Usually if you didn't overload it, you can't do that. You'd have to go through the whole process of copying the individual information again, but since it's overloaded, we can just do that. Capacity plus equals 5, which will change the variable to that. So that's all we have to do. Essentially, it's just going to check anytime it gets close to capacity, close to essentially originally if it gets closer to 5, it'll just call that function, and it'll just make the array bigger. So next we're going to be doing the search void database search standard string. Actually, we don't need standard there. I just kind of got into the habit. String name. All right, so here, basically what it's going to do is just loop through the array and try and find if any of the names equal whatever the inputted one was, which is a name right here. So we're just going to first, for int I equals 0, I is less than used, I plus plus. I have a little for loop here to loop through the array. And then inside here, we're going to have if data I. So if it's at that point in the array, dot get underscore name dot or equals name. So it's using that accessor to get the name of that element, and it's comparing to see if that name is equal to the name inputted, and if it does, then we're going to cout employee found. And we're going to just go ahead and just put data I dot output. Yeah, output cout. So it'll just pass cout into that and just output it to the screen. That's using the oops, hold on. Yeah, it's basically just using the output function that we created in the last 2 videos ago for the employee class. All right, now lastly, we want to also tell the user if there was no employees found, if the name that was inputted was incorrect, if there's nobody in the database by that name. So we're going to create an integer up here called num underscore found that's going to hold the amount of people that were found. Because the nice thing about what this function does is that it will, if they have multiple people by the same name, it will output all of the people by that name. It won't just output the first one, which was the problem with the last one I did. That was a problem with it, that it only output the first person by that name. But here it'll output everybody by the name inputted. So essentially, then inside of here, every time there's a person found, we're going to increment the numFound variable, numFound plus plus. All right, there's that. Then outside of this loop, what we're going to want to do is check to see if underscore found equals 0. So essentially, if numFound equals 0, then they didn't find anybody, and cout no employee by that name. end line. Yeah, so essentially that's what that's going to do. It's just gonna tell the user if that name had no results, instead of just giving them an empty screen and making them wonder why, or think that the database is broken when it's just them who did something wrong. All right, so next we're going to do the sister program to this, the search by ID, database, : search ID, int ID. All right, so this is essentially just going to be the same as this. I'll just copy and paste. Control C, Control V. There we go. Instead, it's going to be if dot get underscore ID equals ID underscore number. So it's just going to be essentially exactly the same thing. It's going to loop through it and check to see if each individual element has an ID number equal to the ID number inserted or inputted by the user. If it is, output the information for that employee. Everything's all exactly the same there. So that's actually a pretty simple function. All right, next is one of the more important functions here, the add. It is going to add, yeah, hold on, let me check out the parameters of this real quick. I kind of forget, there's an employee or yep, an employee. Const employee at, what did I name it here? It doesn't exactly have to be the same, but yeah, just because I just called it EMP. Okay, so here, we're going to be using the make bigger function. We're going to check to see first if capacity is greater than, or hold on here. If okay, yeah. If used is greater than or equal to capacity, we're going to call make underscore bigger. So essentially, if the used variable, which we increment every time we add a item, is greater than the capacity of the current array, we're going to call make bigger and make the array bigger. Simple enough. And the adding process is fairly simple. Just data used is equals to EMP, once again using the overload equality operator, or equality operator, whatever, used ++. So it's a very important function. However, it's very simple. You add, you check to see if it's at or above capacity. Then you just add it to the ending, or to at the very end. Use should be the number of the very end element. Since the array starts at 0, the number for the amount of elements should be the one past the last one. Correct? Yep, that makes sense, right? Now, next, it's another simple function. It's just the display all, void, database, display all, like that. Simple for loop in here. Int I equals 0, I is less than used, I ++. All right, and then all we're going to do is just do data I dot output, cout. There we go. That should be good. Looks good. Yep, that's all. That is all that's actually required for that function. Just a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line function that it actually does a good amount of work. is called every single time you want to display all the information. So next, a slightly more complex, but not really that long one, is the remove. So void database remove string name. I believe that's what I called it for continuity's sake. For int I, just a simple, we're going to loop through the array here. So int I equals 0, I is less than used, I plus plus. Now here, if we're going to be doing this by name, so if data I dot get underscore name dot or equals name, what we're going to be doing is essentially setting the data at that particular. So we're going to be doing here. Let's write it out. Data I equals data used minus 1. Used minus. So is this going to be setting the information or the element at that point at I to the last element in the array, and then just basically just truncating it off by making use smaller by doing use minus minus. It's just going to truncate the end off of it and just make basically just set this data outside the bounds of the array so it's not being used anymore. So yep, that's all that's needed for that. Now next is the save function for saving it to a file. Void database save iStream save. Okay, now here, first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to sort the array. Call the sort function, which we'll get into here in a second. For it's just going to this is just going to loop through I equals 0, same as before, and I is less than used, I plus plus. And then we're just going to go outs data I. And that is all that is required for that function, for the saving of the function. A lot of that work is being handled by the overloaded operators of the insertion operator. So that we did before. So a lot of the work is already done. So we're going to go on next to the load. Void database load. Oh, actually, my bad. This is supposed to be O, and this is supposed to be outs. I accidentally mixed that up. I would have found that out pretty quickly after running the function, after running the file. Load iStream at ins. All right. So for ins, what we're going to be doing is we need to have a temporary variable or temporary employee object. So we're just going to do employee temp, and we're going to be doing a while loop. While ins temp. We are going to be, first of all, we need to check to see if it's at capacity, if used is greater than or equal to capacity, just call make bigger. There we go. There. And then we just need to do data used is equals to temp used plus plus, increment the used counter. All right, and that's all we need to do for the load. And the only thing we have left to do are the sortings, which our sortings, what they're going to use is a process called bubble sorting. If you don't know what it is, you'll see here in a second. It's just a process of like basically just swapping elements in an array. So say I'll just give a little demonstration here. So say we have a little array here of several characters. Say we want to do it lowest first, and we have 5, 1, 3, 4, 6, 9, 7, 3. I already did 3. I'll just make that like 2. There we go. So, but what bubble sorting will do is it'll take the first element and compare it to the second element right here. And if the first element is greater than the second element, what it'll do is just swap them. And then it'll check the second element, and if that is greater than the next element, it'll just swap them and continue to do that until the array is sorted. So we'll go ahead and jump into that right now. Void sort underscore name. This doesn't take any parameters. All right. So the first thing that you need for a bubble sort is a bool value. Just call it, like I always call it, done equals false. And just initialize it to that. You need a temporary object here. Temp. It's just going to, in order to do a swap, you need to have a temporary variable to hold the one element while it's being transferred. All right, so now we need to have first step of a bubble sort is a while loop, while not done. And then first, there you need to set done equals true. You see here in a second why that's needed. Then for loop, we need to start looping through the array. Int I equals 0. I is less than used minus 1. That's needed. Minus 1 is needed because it's just something to do with bubble sorting in this way. You need to have minus 1 there. I plus plus. Okay, so next we need to check if data I dot get underscore name dot or is greater than data I plus 1 dot get underscore name. All right. So is this basically going to, you can do comparisons like that with strings, because by default for the string class, the greater than, less than, and equality, the double equals, are all overloaded they're all overloaded by default, so you can use them. And so then if that's true, done equals false. Is this going to, yeah, you set done to true here because basically if the first two are compared and found to be less than, it's just going to quit and leave. It's just going to set done equals false, or no, done is going to be set to true, and it's not going to be reset to false if this evaluates to false. So it's just going to quit the loop and just assume the rest of it's sorted. Temp equals data I. This is the first part of the swap. Data I equals data I plus 1. Data I plus 1 equals temp. So that is how you do how like a simple swap is done using a temp variable. So it just takes the first element, stores it into a temp, sets the first element to the second one, and then the second one to the information from the first one that was stored in temp. It just does a little circle swap, just like in a little bit of in a small circle. It always helps to just draw that out. That's what I always do to remember it. All right, and that's all that is needed for the name sort. Now we're going to go on to the last one, which is the sorting by salary. Database sorts salary. Now I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste here. Control C, Control V. So, because this is essentially the same, however, this is get underscore salary, and change this to get underscore salary. So yeah, that's the only thing you have to change between sorting name and sorting salary. And you could even do a sort by ID number if you wanted to. You just change this to get underscore ID number, and you don't, and boom, you have another function that does sorting by ID number. So yeah, that is actually all the functions that are required, or that we had in the database file here implemented. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. That was quite long, over 30 minutes long. So, hey, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you check out the other videos, the previous ones, and the next one. I'm probably going to be finishing up doing the main function, which is just going to tie all the other ones together. So, hey, thanks for watching. Hey, make sure you guys have a nice day.